Okay, my topic today is vaccinations, and my main claim is that the fear of vaccinations is having a negative effect on our community. Basically, when I refer to vaccinations, I'm actually talking about the MMR vaccine, which is measles, mumps, and rubella, and also the DTaP vaccine, or DTaP, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis. So first, I will show how the fear is exposed, expose how this fear of vaccine safety is unproven. Second, I'd like to show how failure to vaccinate is causing an increase in diseases. And third, how it's depriving the community of the benefit of herd immunity, which I'll talk about. My first point, the fear propagated by anti-vaccine advocates is unfounded. This actually stems from the current controversy stems from in February of 1998, the British medical journal, The Lancet, published a study that was done by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. And basically it links autism to vaccinations because he studied 12 children who had suffered severe mental regressions after having been vaccinated with the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. So after this happened, a lot of parents started refusing to have their kids vaccinated, which led to a drop in vaccination rates. And several years after this had passed, Brian Deere, an investigative reporter for the British Medical Journal, he exposed Dr. Wakefield and the study to be fraudulent and with severe conflicts of interest. 2010 article in the New York Times detailed that part of the cost of Dr. Wakefield's research was paid for lawyers for parents who were suing vaccine makers for damages. And that Dr. Wakefield also had patented in 1997 a measles vaccine that would succeed if the current vaccine was withdrawn or discredited. So following this, an investigation by the General Medical Council, Dr. Wakefield and his co-author, John Walker Smith, were struck off the medical register for ethical misconduct. And it took actually, according to reporter Brian Deere, it took the Lancet 12 years to retract the paper, by which time its mischief had been exported, the scare took off around the world, unleashing fear, guilt, and infectious diseases, and fueling suspicion of vaccines in general. Now, another reason to trust the safety of vaccines is that studies have proven that a link does not exist between the development of autism and vaccinations. In 2014, Pediatric Digest published a review article regarding the safety of vaccines, and in this article they reported that the strength of evidence is high that the MMR vaccine is not associated with the onset of autism in children. Vaccinations also have a lower incidence of adverse reactions. In an article for CNN, a pediatrician in Texas named Dr. Ari Brown explained that vaccines, like any other medication, aren't 100% risk-free. You have a sore arm, redness at the injection site, and these things are seen commonly, but fortunately the serious adverse effects are rare. But how rare? So according to the World Health Organization, the rates of serious adverse events from the DTaP vaccine were basically like out of 100,000 doses, maybe 0.5 experienced seizures, while 14 to 62 had episodes that resulted in loss of consciousness. And with the measles vaccine, it was 1 in 2,000 to 3,000 experienced seizures, while for every 1 million doses, 1 to 3.5 suffered an allergic reaction. Another reason to note the safety is that the U.S. has a sophisticated vaccination testing program, and it operates independently from the vaccine makers, pharmaceutical companies that make the vaccine, so that there's no conflict of interest present. My second point shows how this fear is having deadly consequences. The failure to vaccinate is causing a resurgence in potentially lethal vaccine-preventable diseases. The first example is one that actually affects California, particularly. It's the whooping cough or pertussis epidemic was an epidemic in 2010 and is currently an epidemic. Whooping cough is a highly contagious respiratory tract infection, and it primarily affects infants and children, as well as some adults and adolescents who have impaired immunity. It gets its name from a high-pitched, sharp intake of breath that follows severe coughing. In 2010, it reached epidemic proportions, according to the Department of Public Health in their pertussis report, that 8,000 confirmed cases of pertussis have been reported, resulting in 10 deaths. And in 2014, they reported that California is in a pertussis epidemic with 8,749 cases that have been reported so far this year in 2014. 312 have been hospitalized, 74 in the ICU, and 1 has died. Another example would be the measles outbreak that occurred in France in 2011. The CDC reported that 36 of the 53 European member states of France had reported approximately 14,000 cases. My third point shows how a failure to vaccinate deprives the community of the protection of herd immunity. Herd immunity is basically a means of protecting the population by vaccinating a large proportion of the population. So it works similar to the way a herd of cattle protects themselves from predators. They surround themselves with a large number that protects the weaker animals inside. A PBS article on the herd immunity states that in order for this to work, the protection has to have it requires a certain percentage of people in the community to be vaccinated. So which leads to my final example, which is the vaccination threshold. This is the actual percentage. For example, measles is highly contagious and needs 95% of the community to be vaccinated in order to prevent an outbreak. And pertussis, the whooping cough, needs 92%. So these numbers show how important herd immunity is and how important vaccinations are in maintaining a solid defense against preventable diseases. To conclude, we've seen how the fear regarding vaccination safety is unjustified and based on a fraudulent study that has been widely discredited. We saw how this fear caused a massive health scare, resulting in a failure to vaccinate. This has then led to the rise of deadly vaccine-preventable diseases. And finally, I've explained how without the benefit of vaccination, herd immunity can no longer exist to protect those who are most susceptible to it.
All right, Jason, everything's very clear when you're presenting it. You explain the theories on each of the points. There's a lot of evidence on all of the points. The one place where I see maybe a little bit of weakness is on the first point, where you need to demonstrate that there has in fact been a decline in immunizations and that it is linked to those fears that you talked about. That seemed to be the one place. There's like a presupposition that that's what explained a decline in vaccinations, and I'm not sure that that's enough proof to show the causality is where you say it is. Otherwise, like I said, I thought that you did a very good job presenting information on all of the other points. I'm not sure that there's a lot of controversy on how safe the vaccine is. That seems like it's pretty factual, or that it has the benefits that you're talking about of herd immunity. The question becomes, though, at what level do we have to have the vaccination in order to provide that herd immunity, and is the fear that's been generated by these other kinds of things enough to suppress it below that level? That's the kind of thing that I think you needed more of in the argument. But it sounded very strong. Thank you.